right. Well, this week, vaYiqra, chapter 24. We're going to start on, of course. That's Leviticus chapter 24, starting with verse 1. There's some things about Hebrew that a lot of people don't know. We're talking people who speak Hebrew, people born and raised in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, as they say in modern Hebrew. Um, Biblical Hebrew, it was Yerushalayim, and in modern, it's Yerushalayim. I don't know why they decided to change that, but they did. They speak Hebrew and all of that, and they don't realize how dramatically different biblical Hebrew is to modern, and how different the words are, because words just, the word that, in particular, ye, it can mean is, it can mean was, it can mean will be. And in modern Hebrew, then, if you don't realize how to know if it's essentially past or future tense, because biblical Hebrew doesn't have a present, it's past or future, even if it's in the present. You're either going to write it in the past or the future, even if it's talking about something you're doing right now. Because if it's going to continue on, then you write it in the future. If it's going to end, you write it in the past, even if you're talking about something that is happening right now. And that's all you had to work with in biblical Hebrew. So there's stuff like that even modern Jews don't know about. You would probably, yeshiva students would know this, maybe not. I didn't learn it in yeshiva, so maybe not, maybe more the issue here. So there's just some things that people don't know. And so we're beginning a brand new subject. And this whole chapter is going to be on that one subject. And if you don't understand all of the grammar behind that, go grab Umberto Moshe Cassuto. He wrote a commentary on Genesis and Exodus and then passed away before he could finish the rest of the book. But it's plenty. He goes through the actual grammar of the biblical period. You'll find no better work than his. And it's spread out. You're going to have to read the whole thing, but it's all spread out. But he gives really good examples and tells you exactly how he knows these things. Okay, so talking about this chapter. This whole chapter could be summed up as keeping the light of the world burning. Because everything we're about to learn in this chapter is about that one subject. Now, are there, what do we call that? Topics? Are there different topics? Yes. So we're going to begin with the whole light of the world thing. And it'll by the time we get to the end, it should be very clear. At some point, I'm just not real sure at what point it'll become clear to those who are listening to me, if ever at all. So we begin with the first verse, which is, of course, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, and that means, hey, we're beginning a brand new topic, or subject, rather. It can also be part of a topic or the beginning of a topic, but it's usually the beginning of a subject. Now, I know those two words essentially mean exactly the same thing, but I'm having to use subject as the big picture and topic as if it's bullet points, like it's a side note, if you will, that has an association with the subject itself. You follow? I hope. All right, so let's get into verse 2 where it really starts to matter. Now, my very, very literal translation of the Hebrew text would be command children Yisrael, and he take they, that's from one word, to you oil, olive, pure, beaten, to from light, to make ascend lamp continual or continually. So we start off with Zav. Now it's a TZ sound, and if you're an English speaking American who has never spoken or learned any Hebrew, you're hearing basically ZAV, but I actually pronounce the TZ as an individual sound, and you can't hear it. You know why? Because if you don't learn that before the age of 5, you won't be able to hear it. At least that's what they told me. Anyway, this is command. It's to set up, to constitute, to appoint, to put someone over someone else. You know, that's a command that's given. It's a decree. Um, it establishes things. So it's, you know, you will do this right now, or you will do this 2 days from now, or whatever. You know, it's a command. It's what we pretty much what we think of as a command. Sort of. All right. But I don't really want to spend a lot of time on that. And this is et. Well, et doesn't have a meaning at all. It's like I always just draw an arrow. I literally draw an arrow when I'm translating, when I have the word et. And it has no meaning. It points to something. So we have the word command, and then it has an arrow. So that command is going to point to whatever it is this command is going to connect to. So what is it? B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. Okay. Anyway, uh, another thought that's been going through my head here recently, and I just was looking at the Hebrew on that. It's exactly what I thought it was. Okay, never mind. We'll talk about that probably next week. Our next word is vaYiqra. That's one word. vaYiqra. And he take they. So that's to take, to stick together, to adhere, to take for oneself, to take a wife, to send after, to fetch anyone, to receive. This word is used in a lot of different ways. And remember, Hebrew is what we call a primitive language. So you have few words, and each of those individual words will be applied to many different things. So the idea of to take and to stick together can be connected to the idea of a man taking a wife, same word. But it's also used of the idea of sending for someone. Take my servant with you to that town and purchase some goods for me. You know, it just can be used in a lot of different ways. But the next word is elecha. So take to you. This command to the children of Israel is that you take to yourself something, or take to the you in this case being the person who is being spoken to at this moment, which is not us. Take to you what? Shemen. What is that? Well, it's oil. It's the fat that comes from animals. You know, they didn't just waste that. They kept it. You know, it came from even olives. You know, you smush them down, you get that oily stuff, and now you got oil that you can use in a lamp. Funny I should say that, because the next word is zayit. Well, that's olives. What you think of? You know, olives. You know, everybody's did it when they were a kid, or watched their own kids do it, or both. They put the little olive on their fingers, you know, and eat them one at a time. My daughter Jessica used to do that all the time, and I did that as a child as well. But anyway, so it says, take to yourself olive, uh, or well, didn't it say oil? Yeah, the oil of an olive, but it says zach. Well, no, that's pure. That's we'll get into that. Katit, so pure beaten olive oil. This is the first. You see, I think we call it virgin olive oil. That's the very first pressing of the oil, right? Yeah, that's essentially what's being said here. Is you take the first pressing of this oil, not the second or the third, but the first one. That's what they mean by the pure beaten olive oil. It doesn't mean that you have to now beat your olive oil with a hammer or something. You can stomp on it with your feet or use a machine that presses it down. None of that matters. I know people try to make it matter when it comes to the Bible, but it doesn't. Because all they're telling you is to get yourself virgin olive oil. All right. Then it says, lema or. Now, your basic word here is or. vaYiqra, let there be light. It's the word light. It's dark. You light a candle, or that's your light. But see, they've added the lamed to the front of it, which is two or four. To or the word for, and then it has a mem, which means from, a part taken from the whole. So two from light. Well, that don't make any sense, Rob. Maybe it will in a minute. Then it says leha olot. It's to the ha in this case is not the. Usually you say ha, put a hey in front of a word in Hebrew, and it becomes the or this. Well, that's not what happens here, because this is putting the word in a different binyan. So it goes from ascend, it's make it ascend, right? So make it go up, make it go from a low place to a higher place. So you're going to make light ascend. It's not about the smoke, it's about the light. The light will ascend. So, like light on a lampstand, in this case, because we're talking about oil, light on the top of a hill. Just going to throw that in there and let you percolate on that a minute. And then it says ner. So we have this, you get your pure olive oil, and it's to from light to make it ascend. It's so that the light will make it ascend. And then it's lamp, right? And your last word is tamid, which is continually, right? So where did that mem come from? Okay, we're going to figure it out as we go along, but the ner, the single individual cup that you're going to put the oil in, is going to be raised up and set on a menorah, which is a lampstand with more than one wackadoo stem, whatever you call that. So each one of them is a part, if you will, taken from the whole. You have these separate ner or nerot in plural, but you have the individual cup, and those each represent parts of the whole. So you're going anyway. You guys get it. So the mem had to be there because there's going to be more than one, and because it's the combination of all of them that makes the light much brighter, makes it bigger, it covers more area, whatever you want to say it. But that's why that mem was added to that word. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. So your translation: command the children of Israel that they bring to you pure beaten olive oil, so that a continual light from the lamp, the ner, will ascend. All right. So let's compare that to Shemot 27:20, which is Exodus 27:20. And you shall command the children of Israel that they bring to you pure beaten olive oil, so that a continual light from the Ner will ascend. Sound familiar? I just read the other one, right? Yahweh spoke to Moshe and told him to command the children of Israel to do, this and that. There's a lot of things in the Torah. Thus, we might conclude that the you, I'm saying you, Y-O-U with, air quotes here, in this verse refers to Moshe. He's the one that's being spoken to, right? However, God knew that Moshe would not live forever. Thus, the text is saying that the people should bring the oil to somebody, maybe a light bearer. Well, it didn't say. Could be the Kohanim, right? Now, some of the sages asked why Moshe repeated this law, since the Hebrew text of Shemot, or Exodus 27:20, and Leviticus 24:2, which is where we are right now, they're identical. The Hebrew text is identical with one exception. In Shemot, it starts off, you shall command, and our current verse just says command. It doesn't say you shall, it just starts with the word command. So you have that you shall at the beginning, and otherwise from the point you hit the word command, these two verses are identical. The Hebrew text is identical from that point on. I mean, right down to the vowel pointing, they're identical. So some of the sages are saying, oh, why is he repeating a law that's already been given? Well, let's take a look at a different verse in Shemot, chapter 35, verse 27. It says, and the Nesi'im. You guys remember what Nesi'im are? The Nasi, the prince, the leader, the head honcho, whatever you want to call it. It really means prince, as in, you got the king and his sons are called prince. It really does mean that, but you're talking about the leaders of the people, the Nesi'im. So it says, and the Nesi'im brought the shoham, that's stones, the shoham stones, and the miluim, that's setting, so it's setting stones, because I don't remember if they use the ved or the other word, but it doesn't matter. So you're bringing the shoham stones and the setting stones. And it says, for the ephod. Remember, that's that vest that the high priest wore and had the little stones on it and all of that. So now it's saying that the leaders of the people brought him these stones for that vest. And then it says, and for the hoshen, for the breastplate. So we have, because the breastplate was part of the vest. But it goes on. So now they break this verse up. You wind up with verse 27 and verse 28, but that really should not have happened, because verse 28 is the rest of verse 27, right? So it says, and bosem, so that's spice, and shamem. Well, there's your word for oil. And then it was followed with or, for light, ki ors, for light, and oil for the mishcha, which is where we get the word Moshiach. It's the same root. So it's anointing, and the oil for the anointing. And the ketoret. So that's perfume, smelly, sweet smell of some sort, for the sam, incense. So we usually hear it sweet smelling savor, or sweet smell, or sweet incense. To tell you the truth, we don't know if the ketoret is the incense and the psalm is the sweet smell, or if the ketoret is the sweet smell and the psalm is the incense. We don't really know, because these are words that over time begin to, what's that when you, interchangeable. They became interchangeable. And so over time, we've truly lost what it means, but it doesn't matter. We know that it's supposed to be a sweet smelling incense. Okay. So what happened here? Well, the Nesi'im, it starts off, the Nesi'im brought, and they brought all this other stuff, the stones and all of that, but they brought the shamim. They brought the oil, followed by ki or, for light. They brought the oil for the light. Some sages, of course, because of this, argued that our verse is not a repeat, because the Nesi'im brought the oil when the tabernacle was being built, and now God is telling the children of Israel that they must bring the oil to continue that which the Nesi'im started. However, if the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, brought oil to Moshe, or were to bring it to Moshe, let's say it that way. If they, now they're just now been ordered to do it. So now all the thousands, if not millions of these Jews are going to all bring it to Moshe. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just collecting the oil and storing it. It's going to become a full-time job. And further, what happens when Moshe dies? Will this law go away? Well, how can it? God said it was eternal, or he's going to. I don't think we got to that yet, but he's going to say it's eternal. So it can't be Moshe. Here's what happens. The children of Yisrael are going to bring their oil to the Nesi'im. And the Nesi'im are going to bring it to Moshe. Is that what it just said? Yes. Don't you think that's the way it happened from the beginning? You really think the Nesi'im went out and crushed up a bunch of olive oils just themselves and they brought the oil? No. They went out to the people, told them what they needed. The people made it. Oh, yeah, that is what Exodus said. Yeah, it happened that way from the beginning. So they are repeating this verse. This is a repeat. It is not one that's for the building of the tabernacle and the other for the continuation of the light being brought. No, it was this way from the beginning. So we are repeating a rule, a law, a commandment, whatever you want to call it. So let's move on to 3. My very literal translation. It says, from outside to curtain the testimony in tent appointed times, he arranged with it Aharon from evening to morning to faces Yahweh continual statute, eternal, to generations, you all. So we have mechutz, which is what I have from outside, because their word is chutz, and they've added the meme in front of the word. So they say properly it's a wall, hence especially the outside of a house, whatever is without, out of the house, the streets outside, the outer, what's outside the city, because they usually had walls around them. That's where that idea came from. And so then they give a lot of examples of what could be outside the city, fields, country, deserts, all kinds of things. Then we have lefarochet. Well, that's your curtains. That's for your curtains. Then it says ha'edut. Edut, that's from the word edah. But we're not talking about the actual edah here, or maybe we are. But that literally means testimony. And they say it's a precept of God. a law, especially used of the Decalogue, which are the 10 categories, to put it correctly, not 10 commandments. And then it says, Be Ohel. So that's in the tent. The testimony in the tent. And then it says, of course, Moed. So it's the tent of appointed times. Roch. Okay. So this is to arrange in order, or it's of the, to put in order, to set in a row, to stretch out in a straight line, to extend. That last part probably doesn't need to be there. That's a non-Hebrew speaking person trying to make the Hebrew make sense in English. And so you get things that kind of lead you astray. But this is arranging things. And let's say you're going to take care of the dishes. Well, maybe you want to take those dishes, and if you're old timey like my wife and I, you don't worry about putting them in the dishwasher. Sorry, my computer is doing some very weird things. Okay. So first thing you got to do is gather up all the dishes. Next, you got to scrape any excess food and that sort of thing off of it. Got to fill up the I want to say swimming pool, the sink, with some soapy water, and then you got to wash the stuff. Then you got to rinse the stuff. Then you got to put it in a little tray, and then you got to dry the stuff or let it dry, and then you got to put the stuff up. All of that would be arranging your dishes. So the idea of, arranging these things in a straight line, no. Were they in a straight line? Is best we can tell, yes, because the stems of the menorah, which all of these nerot went on top of, the being the little cups that hold the oil, they were in a straight line as best as we know. We don't know. We do know from the image, there was a relief chiseled in stone by the Romans when they sacked the temple and took the menorah. We could see that it was in a straight line. That does not mean that the one that was put in the first temple was in a straight line. We don't know. So anyway, to try to connect that with, well, it's because you're putting those cups in a straight line. No, that's not what it's about. It's about, you got to take the cup, and maybe you got to clean out the old stuff and clean the cup out real nice, and and put your new wick in there, and because maybe there was bugs that flew to the light and died in the cup and that sort of thing. So it's all about everything that goes along with it. They got to gather up the oil. They got to get the things clean. They got to put the oil in, and the wicks, and the getting lit. That whole thing is all part of what this word is talking about. That's to arrange. So it's a little more expansive than we might think of with our word being arranged. Then it says oto, so that's it. It's only an arrow, but they've added the vav at the end of this word, and so there you have it. Then it's aharon, so Aaron is going to arrange it, right? But you do realize that in Hebrew, aharon is a noun, but it's not necessarily a person's name, because in Hebrew it means light bringer. So they may not actually be saying Aaron's name. And remember, in this previous verse, or at least in verse 2, it doesn't actually say the name of Moshe. It says it's using the word for you. And we made that assumption that it's Moshe, but then looking at the other verse from chapter 35 of Shemot, we realize, no, it's the Nesiim. That's the you in that verse. So this even though it says Aharon and says Aaron in your English translation, that may not be right. It could be light bringer and not the name Aaron itself. Then it says Me'erev, so that's Erev is the evening. So the meh, the M sound in the front of it, makes from evening. Then it says Ad, which is until Boker, until morning. So from the evening until the morning, they're going to burn the oil in the lamps because you probably don't need them during the day. Does that mean that if you have a very dark day, you can't use them? No, it doesn't mean that. No reason why you can't go ahead and light them in the day, because what we're talking about is a command to keep them running at night. It doesn't mean they can't run in the, can't be lit in the day. Just kind of a waste of oil and money and all that sort of thing when it's as bright as day and you don't need it. So if you're not having a bright day, feel free to fire up them lamps, light bringer. And then it says lipne, so that's before the face or to the face in the presence of Yahweh, they give God's name. And then it says tamid. So this is going to be done before God continually. Then it says hukat olam. So that is a eternal statute. This is going to go on forever and ever. How long? Ledo rotechem, to every one of your generations. They're all supposed to experience this, even when there's no temple. There's no exception given here. Now, is there an exception given somewhere else? Maybe, but we're not there. We're here. No exception given. Just saying. So our translation, from the outside of the veil of testimony, in the tent of appointed times, the light bearer will set them, speaking of the Nerot, in order. And then I've added to burn in squiggly letters, continually from evening until morning. In the presence of Yahweh, this is an eternal statute to your generations. Okay. Looking for, the light bearer. So I've translated it light bearer because, well, you probably know why. Okay. How do we know if this is supposed to happen when there is no temple? Well, here's an argument that could be given. The temple is the place where God has placed his name, where God has his presence is there in that place. And that's the place where this is supposed to be done. So that would make a good argument for we don't do this when there is no temple. It's not a definitive argument, but it is a good argument. All right. Since Aharon did not live forever, we know that the use of the word Aharon should not be taken as the name of Moshe's brother, but as a light bearer, which is what Aharon means, right? So it should have said light bearer, not the name of his brother. And we can compare that to Shemot 27:21. It says, in the tent of appointed times, outside the veil, which is above the testimonies, the light bearer and his sons, and the Kohanim, could say it either way, will set them, speaking of the Nerot, in order from evening to morning in the presence of Yahweh, an eternal statute to the generations of the children of Yisrael. So it's almost exactly the same thing. It is said a little differently, but very little difference there. And there's a little more clarity here because it's calling out the children of Israel, calling them by name instead of just saying to you or to your children, as the previous one said. Okay, so looking at verse 4. Upon the menorah, the pure, he set in order the lamps to faces Yahweh continually. So you realize this is part of the previous verse. This is not a new verse. It's a continuation of the last one. So we have all, which is on or upon, could be above. It's used in all those different ways. Ha menorah. Well, you can't, unless you know how to make the nerot, the little lamps, float above the menorah. We got to figure it means on the menorah. And you guys know that that's in the English Bibles, the older ones, they call that a candelabrum or a candlestick, but it's the menorah, the thing with all the different sticks on it, and you put the lamps on those sticks. Then it says ha tehorah, which is your word for purity. So it's that which is pure, that which is set aside for God, basically that which is holy. The only way it could be pure is if it's you could say if it's made of pure gold, which this particular menorah was in fact made of pure gold, it could indicate that. But it's saying that the menorah, the pure, but it does not use the word for gold. So the idea should be connected to it's holy, it's set aside for God. Then it says Ya'o Roch, which is that word for the setting in order to arranging, to do whatever it needs, whatever the lamp light bearer needs to do to make all of this happen. That's the same word here. He's going to do his job, going to make sure that the lamps or the cups, if you will, are kept clean and kept filled and have good wicks in them so they'll burn. All of that stuff is going to be done. Then it says et, which is pointing to something. Ha nerot, so that's the lamps in plural. Lipne, so in the presence of or before the face of Yahweh. Tamid, continually. So it's going to go on in the face of God nonstop. Well, kind of going to stop during the day, but every evening this is going to happen. So we have he, speaking of the light bearer, will set the nerot, the lamps, in order on the pure menorah, and then I've added in squiggly lines to burn continually, to burn continually. That's the whole point of doing this, is so that you can light them and they'll burn continually. Then it's in the presence of Yahweh. Okay. So, yeah, we're doing fine. So verse 5, very literal. And to take you fine flour and bake you, an arrow and then the word it, 12 challah, that's perforated bread. It's used for cakes. Is it like pancakes? It's used for crackers. That'd be your perforated bread, if you will. So you're going to take to yourself fine flour, and you're going to bake that flour into bread. Is our we use that word in the modern world. We say challah, and we're talking about the bread that's braided and all that kind of stuff. That's not from the biblical times. That's later Judaism. I love that type of bread and like eating it once or twice a year, as always get a piece of it. Not a big bread eater, so I don't get it often. But that's not what this word means. It can be used of let's think about this. It can be used of saltine crackers. It can be used of pancakes. It can be used of cornbread. It's just a generic word for, I want to say, for bread. That's not really what this means. It is really more the idea of crackers and flatbread than it is anything else. But then it says you're going to, and to take you fine flour and bake you her 12 challah, to the number 2 tenths, it will be the challah, the one. You probably figure that out right away. So you have vaYiqra, so kach, take. That's the used of taking a wife or sending someone somewhere to get something for you and bring it back. That they're going to use that word. So you're going to take solet. Well, solet is fine flour. They say flour or meal, peeled barley, pearl barley, if that's spelled correctly. I may have typed that wrong. I don't know. The primary idea lies in shaking and especially of sifting. Thus, fine flour. It's fine flour. Then we have vaYiqra. You're going to bake it. You're going to cook it in an oven. That's basically, to bake is to put it in the oven, right? I don't know anything about cooking. I'm not getting any help. It's old. There's your word et, and then they've added the hey at the end, which would be the feminine, but it's it in our language. Shetem esre. That's like kind of like saying two, the number 2, and following that with teen. We say 12, right? So it's just the number 12. Then chalot, so that's challah in plural, right? Because we just said 12. So you can't say challah in singular anymore. Now it becomes chalot. So 12 cakes. Let's use that word, cakes. Shene, so that's your number 2. That's the number 2. Then it says esronim, tenths. So we have 2 tenths. It's going to be 2 tenths. That's a measurement. Ha challah, the cakes. Ha echat, the one. It's the cake, the one. So what are they saying? Well, it's pretty simple. And you, who are we talking about? We're talking about the Kohanim. You will take fine flour and bake 12 chalot, 12 loaves. There you go. Loaf, that's maybe our best word for that. Yay me, I put something in there correct. You'll bake 12 loaves with it. Each loaf will be made of 2 tenths fine flour. The amount of fine flour for each individual loaf will be 2 tenths. 2 tenths, we don't know, because I think the English Bibles say 2 tenths deal, as if that's going to help anybody. Nobody knows what 2 tenths amounts to. So these are going to be really small cakes. They're loaves, if you will, in a fistful, maybe a cup and a half. maybe 2. Not real sure. Nobody knows for sure. Anyone who tells you they know for sure does not actually know for sure. Too much of this stuff has been lost to time. And so we're taking a wild-haired guess at an awful lot of these ideas. So in verse 6, and set you them, speaking of the bread, 2 rows 6, the row upon the table, the clean or the pure, 2 faces Yahweh. So we have ve santa. And so you're going to set, to put, to place. You're putting something on top of something. You're going to do this. They're speaking to the Kohanim, not to us. Tom, and so that's it's pointing at something, but the the at the end, that's them. You'll take them, speaking of the loaves of bread. Shatayim, 2 ma'arachot. So 2 rows. ROWS, 2 rows. Shesh, that's a word. 6, that's the number 6. Hama'arachet, the rows, 6 rows. Al, so that's upon or above or on something. Ha shulchan, well, that's the table. Remember, there's a table in this place, inside this holy place, right? Then it says lipnei, so that's in the presence of or before the face of, guess who? Yahweh. So your translation. And you, speaking of the Kohanim, not you, the person reading this, or you, the person listening to me read this, but the Kohanim. You will place them in 2 rows, 6 per row, upon the pure table in the presence of Yahweh. Okay. And then verse 7, and give you upon the row frankincense, pure and was it, 2 bread for memorial burnt offering to Yahweh. Okay, so ve natata. So natan, to give. You're going to give, to set, to put, to place. So you're going to put something in this case. Al, you're going to put it on. Ha ma'arechet, the row, levona. So you're going to put on the row. You got 2 rows. On those rows, you're going to put frankincense. That's what that word is in Hebrew. We would say frankincense in English. Zakah, that's pure. So it's pure frankincense. Vehaita, that's that word that it was, it is, it will be. So you have the vav in the front, and it is, or it will be, la lechem. It will be for bread. It'll be for the bread. The frankincense will be for the bread. Le'azkara, for a memorial. It's so that you remember. It's well, that's all I know to tell you on that. Then ish, there's your word for burnt offering. La Yahweh, for Yahweh. So your translation, and you, speaking of the Kohanim, will place pure frankincense upon the rows, and it will be bread for a memorial, a burnt offering for Yahweh. How do you get burnt offering? Well, didn't you have to cook it in an oven? It's considered a burnt offering, apparently. Let me try to push this. So now we're moving on to verse 8. In day, the Shabbat. In day, the Shabbat. Yes, it says it twice. He arranged us to face his Yahweh continually from children Yisrael, covenant eternal. Beyom HaShabbat. So in the day of the Sabbath. That's followed by Bayom HaShabbat. I checked. I was like, what? Did I, copy and paste this wrong or something? And which there's not a lot of copy and pasting with me. I type most everything from scratch. But I was, with that kind of mistake, I was like, boy, I must have copied that twice or something. So I went back to the Hebrew, and sure enough, it says it twice. Then it says, Ya'ar Chenu. And that's the arranging stuff, to setting it in order, to doing your little job there. Lipne, so before the face or in the presence of Yahweh. Damim, continually. Then it says me'et, so you have et, which is just an arrow, but the mem being in front of that is from. Then it says B'nai Yisrael. Then it says Berit. So that's a covenant, so called from the idea of cutting, since it was the custom in making solemn covenants to pass between the divided parts of a victim, of the animal that just got cut up. They cut them in half, and it was the custom to walk in between those two halves of that cut in half animal. So think of a great big old bull, and they just chop it right in half, and now you're going to walk in between them. Or that's what they used to do. And then what they would do is the person who was called the stronger partner, that's the person who initiates the covenant. And the weaker partner is the one who accepts the covenant. It did not ever mean that the stronger partner was somehow stronger or had some better position in the covenant. No, it's just identifying who came up, who initiated the covenant. And weaker just means they're the acceptor. That's all that meant back in those days. It's taken on a life of its own since then. But the initiator, the stronger partner, would walk in between. Let's say it's a big old bull, and he'd reach down and scoop up as much of that blood from that bull as he could and just wipe it all over himself. Then the weaker partner, if the weaker partner was excited about, because they did this because they were excited. So if the weaker partner is just as excited as the initiator was, then that weaker partner would go through and scoop up that blood and wipe it all over themselves. That's what they used to call being washed in the blood. Being washed in the blood. Some of you Christians are freaking out right now, aren't you? Because that's actually what being washed in the blood means biblically. So they would walk between the parts of the animal, then they would finish cutting it up and all that kind of stuff, and they would cook it, and they'd have a big old barbecue, and then they would eat that stuff together. And that's what this word berit is. It means it's everything involved in making a covenant. You come to an agreement, you cut up an animal, you wash yourselves in the blood of that animal, then you cook that animal, and then you eat that animal. And at the end of all of that, somebody says, Nishlam, it is finished. Does that mean it's all over? No, that means now we start the covenant. Now we start living according to whatever this covenant is that we made. That means it's the beginning, not the ending. It's the ending of the process. Well, that's what berit means. Okay, so it's a sacrifice. And you can't have a sacrifice without the shedding of blood. You can't have a sacrifice without entering into a covenant. At the end of a sacrifice, now you live according to the covenant. You don't say it passed away and this is a new thing. Anyway, let me move on. Olam, so it's eternal. So your translation, I pushed it, didn't I? In the day of rest, in the day of Shabbat, the Kohen will set them, speaking of the loaves, in order. in the presence of Yahweh continually. It's from Bnei Yisrael, it's from the children of Israel. It is an eternal covenant. This verse is the only time in the Hebrew Bible where the phrase "in day the Shabbat" appears. B'yom HaShabbat, B'yom HaShabbat. It is the only place in all of the Hebrew Bible where this phrase is said. Anytime emphasis is intended, a single word or a couple of words together are repeated, or perhaps different words that essentially mean the same thing. One is followed after the other. They did that to add emphasis, right? But I can think of absolutely no reason to make that connection to this. In fact, if I had my suspicions, which I do, I would think that the first B'yom HaShabbat is the end of the previous sentence. And the second one is the beginning of this sentence. I think it's a mistake on the part of because in Hebrew, they didn't have spaces between words, and they did not have spaces at the end of a sentence. It's just one long thing. And I think that they messed up. I think they should have divided these two sentences up at a different spot. So I'm trying to back up now. So if you went to that previous verse, it could have said, "And you will place pure frankincense on the rows, and it will be bread for a memorial, a burnt offering for Yahweh in the day of the Shabbat." Period. Then the next sentence should have started off, "In the day of the Shabbat, you will arrange blah, blah, blah." I think that's the actual mistake, because it only does this one time in all of the text. So that's my 10 cents worth. Not enough to get a cup of coffee anymore. That's as far as I can go today. Shalom, shalom, you guys.
In the English Bible, it says,
Oh my gosh.
The blessing, vaYiqra. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yish merecha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.